Hello coders, I am Jared with Renaissance Coders, and in this video we are going to be creating our cannon for our new full game series in Unity 3D. Now as you can see, I am using Blender version 2.78C. So if you don't have that version, you may want to go check it out from blender.org. I will leave a link to the Blender website in the description below, just in case. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click on the camera, the light, and this object in our scene, press X to delete, and then click delete. The next thing I'm going to do is actually add in a mesh, so I can go down here to add mesh, and I'm going to add in a cylinder. We don't have to worry about the vertices here really, but if you wanted to, you could up the vertices count or drop the vertices count down. I'm going to leave it at 32 with a radius of 1 and a depth of 2. That should be fine. And I'm actually going to change this over to smooth shading instead of flat shading here. So when it's smooth, it basically tries to smooth out our entire object instead of rendering a bunch of faces. So you can see the difference between the two like that. Now let's go over into edit mode. I can press tab to enter edit mode, or we can go down here and just click edit mode. And now the first thing I'm actually going to do is change my selection type to face. So if I click on this button down here, we are now going to be selecting faces. So as you can see, when I've got it on vertex selection, you can see that the vertices are actually showing up here. So if I click, I can select vertices, or I could change it to edge selection, but we are going to start in face selection. So when we are in face selection, we can just right click to select a face. And the first thing I'm actually going to do is select my top and my bottom faces, and I'm using my middle mouse button to actually rotate there, and hold shift to select multiple objects. And now I can actually just press X, and we are going to delete these faces. Okay, the next thing I actually need to do is go back into my vertex selection here. I can hold down the Alt key on Mac. I'm not sure about which key it is on Windows, but hopefully one of you guys knows, and you can post it in the comments below. And then if I just click, it selects this entire ring of vertices for me. And now I'm actually going to go into orthographic view. So on a numbered keypad, you would press the 5 key, which enters into orthographic view, which looks like this. And then if I press 7, I go to the top view like this. What I'm actually going to do is extrude this, so I can press the E key, or I can just do extrude, and we can do edges only or vertices only. So I'm going to try edges only. As you can see now, we are sort of extruding this kind of crazily. So let's just, instead of extruding and dragging, we're just going to extrude, so I can right click, and that will actually not move the vertices. And now I can scale those down by pressing the S key. And as you can see now, we've got them scaling inwards like this, or you could just do scale like this here by clicking on the button. Okay, that seems to be a pretty good scale. Now let's actually check that out. Looks pretty good. All right, let's go to our front view by pressing the 1 button. And if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that this is kind of a really short cannon, which is not what we want. So what I'm actually going to do is press Z to enter like a transparent mode. And if I press C, now we can see that we've got this really big selection thing here, so I can actually drag and select a lot of vertices at once. Okay, and now what I can actually do is just drag these up, but before doing that, I'm going to click on this magnet, which is going to help us to change these vertices positions incrementally. So now I can actually, as you can see, it's sort of snapping to these different grid points. So I'm going to take it up to like the 3rd big block here, and let's also drag the bottom ones, so just press C again, and now we can drag these down as well. So that's starting to look a little bit more like something like a cannon would be shaped. So now the next thing we actually want to do is let's go back into, or actually we can stay in our transparent mode here, and we are going to select this inner ring of vertices here. So let's just press Alt and click along the edge there, and that selects those. Now if we go into our front view, we can extrude these down, and if you hold the middle mouse button, it will maintain it on the Z axis. And let's just drag them down to like right there. Looks pretty good. Now left click, and now we can just press S and scale these down a little bit. Pretty cool. And now you can see we've sort of got the loading point of our cannon. One thing that we actually need to do is fill in the hole here though. So let's go ahead and do that. To do that, I'm going to enter my top down view, and I'm going to zoom in pretty closely on this inner ring here. Press A to deselect all. You can also press A to select all if you want, but right now we are just worried about deselecting, and I can actually right click on this vertices here, and if I extrude it to the center, well, it's not going to snap directly on the center, so let's undo our extrude, remove that, and now let's extrude, and we're going to extrude directly or as closely as we can to the center here. Okay, that's pretty good. And now what we actually need to do is create faces for the interior here. So to do that, I've got this vertex selected, so I'm going to select these other two, and I'm just going to press the F key to make a face. Now I just need to go around this entire ring here, selecting these guys and filling them in as needed. Okay, cool, so that should do it for this, and the reason why I filled this in, and you may not have to for your game, but for our game, we're going to have a lot of moving cameras and things like that, so if the camera were to ever look down the barrel, then it may see through the bottom of the object because we would be looking at the back of these vertices. So when I fill this in, we'd be looking at the back faces, so the camera would look through those, which is not what we want. So I filled this in to simply avoid that. It does up our face count a little bit to fill this in like this. Some people will do it so that you just do one giant face that covers these, but that's not really a great way to do that. You can get some sort of wonky results if you do that. And if you wanted to do it that way, I'll actually show you. I can just delete this central vertices and do faces. Oh, sorry. And do vertices. And now that I've done that, I could Alt select all of those and press F. And now we've got that face like that right there. And since it's at the bottom, it may be okay to do it this way because it would only be seen for maybe a couple of frames, but I prefer to do things the other way just to make sure that we are sort of adhering to best practices. So let's undo that and get back to what we had before. And yes, it does take longer, but you know, that's okay. We definitely don't want to try and go too fast when we're modeling. Okay, now let's go back to our front view. So the first thing we can actually see here is that our Canon model is definitely too straight. You know, if you look at Canons online, they're not this straight. So what we can actually do here is do a loop cut and slide. So if we click on this button and hold it here, you can see that it's creating this purple line here. And if I click, then I can now slide it. And I'm just going to slide it to, like right there is pretty good. And let's do one more of those. I'm just going to slide it up. So right there, that's okay. Now if we press Z, press the A key down, select those, we can do the C key again and select the top vertices. And now if we press the S key, we can scale these down a little bit. Okay, that's all right. Let's deselect those. All right, now let's go back up and select these top vertices again. And let's just move these back up to the top here. Okay, cool. Now we're starting to get sort of a cylinder shape. That's pretty cool, but I do want to add another extension up here. And if we do want to change up these slides, it's pretty easy. All we have to do is click on that, and then we can easily slide an edge. So under Deform here, if we click Slide Edge, you can see that it's sliding along there. Or we could actually just drag it down like that. Okay, cool. Now let's actually go up to the top here, and we're going to now do another loop cut and slide. Slide this up to the top here. And now let's go into face selection mode, and we are going to just select all of those guys like that. Very cool. Now if we go to our top view, we can just press the E key or click on extrude. We can just press the E key here. Now those are extruded. If I right click, it won't move them, and now I can scale these out. Okay, now let's see what that has done for us. So as you can see, it sort of created a little bit of an indentation up top there. When I zoom in on the top up here, we can see that we've now got two faces on the top up here, which again is something that we don't really need for this model. So what we can do is just select the inner ring, press X to delete those, and we can actually just delete the faces. So that will maintain the inner ring of vertices and the outer ring of vertices. And now let's just do that one more time here. Again, just delete the faces so that we are maintaining the inner and outer rings. And now if we go back into vertex selection, we just need to select a few of these and press F. And now a cool trick in Blender is when you have two edges or two vertices that form an edge selected like this, you can just press the F key and then just keep pressing it, and it will automatically fill in for us. It doesn't really work that well when you're doing triangles, but it works really well when you're doing a quad. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now the next thing I actually want to do here is actually bevel this upper lip here, so I can just click on it, then press Control B for bevel, and when I zoom out, you can see that it starts to bevel out a little bit, so that's pretty good. Now I can select the bottom edge and bevel these guys. So again, Control B and just bevel them out. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. If we look at our front view again and press Z, one thing that you may notice is now our outermost ring on the top is slightly higher than our inner ring. So this is the outer ring vertex, and that's going to be our inner ring vertex, which is not something that we want to have happen. So I can just quickly Alt-click those, zoom in a little bit, and drag those down to it. Okay, so now those should be pretty close to the same height. And again, that's going to happen on our bottom lip. If I click this one, that's our inner lip. And if I click this one, that's going to be our outer lip. So we're going to Alt-click here, zoom in, and just move those up. Okay, cool. Now, another thing that we actually need to do to make this look a little bit cooler is do another edge slide, and to do that I can actually just use a shortcut. So we're going to do a Control R, which is a shortcut for the loop, cut, and slide. And I can just place it like right there to begin with, and I can actually scale this in a little bit, and I can actually, well, let's move it up a little bit. Okay, now I also want to fix this edge here because that's kind of a sharp edge. So again, just Control R, click, and now I can just scale this up a little bit here. Okay, so I'm not really overly happy with the way this is coming together right now, so let's just press Z and then C, select all. Whoops, select all of these guys here. Now we can press Z again and move these down. That looks a little bit better. Kind of looks like a rook in chess. Now the next thing I actually want to do is, if we look at the bottom here, we haven't really played with the bottom yet. You know, it's still very empty. So what we can do here is select this edge here. Again, Alt right click to select. And if we go to View, we can look at the bottom view here. And what we can do now is actually extrude, press the E key to extrude, right click to not move the extrusion, and then scale it in. And let's just do that a couple of times here. So again, extrude. Whoops. Scale. And let's do it one last time. So we're going to again extrude, right click, scale. Okay, now if we select this first inner ring and go to our front view, we can actually move this out a little bit. Now if we go back under, back to our front view, move it out a little bit more. And again, under, front view, out a little bit more here. And one more time. So under, front view, out a little bit more. So that's just sort of shaping this rounded bottom for the cannon. And we can of course move these farther down if we want. You know, it's really up to personal preference when you're getting into modeling. But it is really fun to do this sort of stuff. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now what we actually want to do here is go back to our bottom view. So view bottom, we're going to zoom in a little bit, and we are now going to extrude these, right click and scale them in. So that's pretty cool. So we're going to have sort of a flat base here. Now if we go to our front view, we can actually extrude these straight back a little bit. And that's kind of, it's a little bit bigger than I was hoping for. So let's do this. Let's select these guys, scale them in a little bit more. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. And now let's move this up. Okay. That's looking pretty good. And now again, what we can do here is actually extrude, and now we can actually move these down, and if I press my middle mouse button, it provides a constraint for the Z axis, and I can move it down and then scale it. And again, just do that. Scale it, down, scale it. Okay. Now for this face, we're gonna have to do the same thing that we did for the inside of the cannon. So if I go back up to the top, remember when we did the triangle faces there? We're going to have to do the same thing down here. So let's go ahead and go back to our bottom view just to make things a little bit easier. Now we're going to zoom in and select vertex, and we're going to extrude it straight to the middle point here. And now we just need to select these guys, press F to fill in the face. And now another thing that we can actually do here is select this vertex here. As you can see, it's creating a very flat bottom here, so we can actually just go to our front view and move this out a little bit just to make it a little more of like a point or rounded. And if you're wondering about like how many faces or triangles that you have in your composition, you can look at the try count up here. That's really important. You definitely want to keep your try counts fairly low. 1300 or 1344 isn't that bad. So we can keep looking at it. You know, it's pretty cool. Right now, we can also go back to our object view, and that just shows us our cannon without all of the editing stuff turned on. So that's pretty cool looking. You know, it definitely looks like a cannon. Let's go back to editing, because I definitely have a few other things that I want to do to this composition. So let's press the 1 key to go to our front view. We can zoom in a little bit more, and again, we're going to do a loop, cut, and slide here. So I'm going to select it here, move it down, and now I can do a face selection, choose these guys, and what I'm actually going to do is extrude these out a little bit just to sort of give it a little bit of an edge right here. So let's go to the top view, press Z, and now we can extrude. Don't want to move them, and then just scale them up a little bit. Let's see how that did. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, one thing you will notice again when we did that, if I press Z, that these top edges are definitely above the inner edges, which we don't want again. So let's go ahead and select this top edge, move it down, and now select this bottom edge and move it up. And now it looks like it's sort of on the same level here. Okay, and again, just press A to deselect, and let's just take a look at this. Looking pretty cool. I definitely want to add like 2 more of these here. So let's actually go to our front view again, and I can just press Control R to add a loop cut, and then just slide it up. And we're going to do 1 more loop cut and slide it down. And you may be noticing that while I'm doing this, the face count or the try count is increasing pretty dramatically. And that's actually happening because each time I do this, it's creating basically 2 new triangles for each one of these big faces that it's having to cut. So this can definitely result in a lot of faces if you're not careful. So let's go ahead and go back into our face selection, select here, and now let's go back out to our top view. And actually, let's go ahead and select both of these at the same time. Okay, very cool. Now let's go out to our top view. Again, press E to extrude, right click to not move them, and scale them out a little bit. That should be good. Okay, now let's take a look. They're definitely a little off. They're definitely more off this time because we had both selected at the same time, but that's okay. What we can do is go back to our vertex selection, select this outer edge here, go into our front view, press Z, and move them down. And now select the top edge, move those down. If we press Z again, we can see that those have moved to pretty much the same height here in the Z. So now we're going to go to front view again, select this one, press Z, move these guys up, and select the bottom one, move these guys up. And as you can see, I didn't do a great job of moving the top one that time, so let's try that again. A little bit better. Okay, so this is definitely looking a little bit better, and it's definitely looking like a cannon. You know, it's pretty cool stuff. If we go back out to our object view, we can see that we've got the edges showing up and everything like that. One thing you may notice is these sort of creases, and that's happening based on the way that the faces are being populated and the way that Blender is trying to wrap this object. One thing you can do to test like materials on the object though is click on this plus button up here. Now if you scroll down, you can do like a matte cap on it. And that's going to show you like a basic material here. And we can choose several of these. So we can go with like this one. Neon. That's crazy looking cannon. Really colorful. Unicorn cannon. Kind of looks like an eclipse almost. Pretty cool. This one's really interesting. I'm not sure what this would be used for, but it is interesting. Okay, and if you want to get rid of this window, you can also just drag it out. Now, I do want to go into one other thing before we save this object and then import it into our project. One really powerful thing that you can do in Blender is actually add modifiers to your object. And to do that, if you go over to this wrench tool here, you can see that we can add modifiers. Now, if I click on the modifier, it opens up this list with a whole bunch of different modifiers we can use. One of my favorite modifiers is the Subdivision surface modifier. And just a really quick description of this is that it adds a whole lot more faces and kind of cleans up a lot of our edges and things like that. So we can actually go ahead and click on this. And when we click on this, we can immediately see that our cannon looks better. You know, if we go back out to edit mode, we can see that we still have the same faces being populated here, but in object mode, we can see this really sort of high poly looking cannon. Now our try count has increased to 7,000. Well, 7,800, but it looks pretty good. So with something like this, you have to sort of decide, you know, programmatically, can you handle let's go ahead and save this. Is this going to be something that you need the lowest face count possible on? Another thing that you will notice when you're doing this is that sometimes your edges can get a little bit weird. So let's go back out to edit mode and let me just show you this. And when we go out to edit mode, we can see that our subdivision surface faces are actually coming up about halfway on our edge here. And one way you can fix that is
cool.
If
now
you go
let's actually go back out to Unity
mode
and make sure that this
when you do this after
okay.
adding a subdivision surface, stuff gets a little confusing, but that's okay. And we click on this inner loop here. So as you can see, it's hidden behind these rendered faces. And we can actually click on this plus button again, and if we scroll up, we have this edges data, which is the mean bevel weight and mean crease. So now we can actually increase this, and it's going to pull those faces back down like that. And so let's actually go back out and look at it now, and as you can see, it's sort of shifted the rendering to pull to that bottom face. Now if I look at the like underneath here, you can see that it's not doing that. It's really up to you how you want to do that. I'm going to actually undo that and leave it like that right there. That's kind of cool. And let's go ahead and actually apply our modifier here. Now to apply a modifier, you can't be in edit mode. So right now I'm in edit mode. If I were to actually try to apply this, I get a little warning that says modifiers cannot be applied in edit mode. So you actually have to go back out to object mode here and apply it. And now if I go into edit mode, we can see all of those faces now. All of the different vertices that we have for this model. It gets a little crazy when you get down here at the bottom. But it's pretty cool, right? Like, that's a pretty cool cannon. Okay, so we do want to save this somewhere we can find it, or we can save it directly into our Unity project, which is what I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and find our project folders. Now that once you're inside of your project folder, you can just go to Assets. And I don't actually have a folder for models here yet, but that's okay. We can go ahead and name this something, so I'm going to call it Cannon. And now we can go ahead and save our Blender file. Okay, and as we can see here, if we go out to our assets folder, we do have the cannon now pulled in. And when I click on it, you can see over here in the right that we do have the cannon pulled in, and it looks like it's at the right angle. Let's go ahead and actually right click, create a folder, and we can just call this models. And let's move our cannon into here. If we click on materials as well, you'll see that we have an unnamed material, and this was created from inside of Blender. So let's go ahead and rename this to cannon here. Very cool. Let's go ahead and do a capital C since the others all have capital letters. And now let's go ahead and pull in our model to make sure it shows up in our scene. But we do have our cannon pulled in now. Now I actually want to change up the way this looks. I mean, that is kind of cool having a giant, well, that's a big cannon. That's a very big cannon. That's cool though. So let's actually change up the way it looks a little bit. We can click on the albedo color here, and we're going to make it a pretty dark cannon. And this is sort of personal preference. Again, you can change the material to look any way you want, but I like to have my cannons be fairly metallic. So if I up the metallic value here and get it pretty high, we can get a pretty metallic cannon going on. And you can also play with the smoothness as well. And when you up the smoothness really, really high, you can get sort of this really sort of polished cannon look. So that's kind of cool. But again, it's up to you. You know, if you don't like this look and you liked the flat look, you can go back to like, you can actually go all the way down to 0 on both of those. And then you've got like this really sort of flat looking cannon, you know, a very flat color. So that's cool too. I like the metallic though. Looks good. Okay, coders, so that is going to do it for this video. This one's a little bit longer, but we did do something really cool here in creating our very own 3D object for our game. We are going to do another couple of objects for this game inside of Blender, but this is also the first time we have completed a Blender video on our channel. If you want to see more Blender videos, definitely let us know in the comments below. I won't say that we are Blender experts, but we are pretty good at it, and we would be more than happy to create Blender tutorials for you guys. But again, again, that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.